standing here in the heart of the Roman Forum. At its height, this place was the very center of the world. This is where people came from all over the world to do trade and to just really do business and life. It all began as really a marketplace where the people of Rome kind of gathered together to buy the necessities of life. But it kind of grew from there when they began to build temples to worship false gods, and then government buildings here. And this was Times Square at its time for the Roman people. This was the city center, their downtown. This is where everyone came to do life. The Colosseum is the iconic symbol of the Roman Empire. Everywhere you look, you see statues of the Colosseum being sold out on the streets. It's even on the 5-cent coin of currency in Italy here. This place was built in 70 AD, and it was the hub of entertainment. Gladiator fights happened here, and battleship fights were reenacted here. All kinds of theatrical things happened here. This is a place where thousands and thousands of people gathered. Actually, 50,000 people could gather to see all kinds of things. The tragic thing is this is also a place where many people were martyred. Christians would be brought here and they would lose their lives because they would not deny Christ during the Roman Empire. Passages in Scripture where Paul says, to die is gain, but to live is Christ, really comes alive in places like this, where you're in the Colosseum and you're actually looking down in the dungeons where people were held captive and were brought out in Colosseums like this, and they were martyred. They were literally attacked by lions. They were literally picked piece by piece apart because of their faith. In times like this, you realize that we really live in this safe place where we have the freedom to be able to exercise our belief as Christians. But that wasn't the case for the early church. Have you ever heard the term, all roads lead to Rome? You know, it's a pretty accurate picture of the way it used to be. Rome was the fashion capital of the world in its height. Rome was the music capital of the world. Rome was the great superpower. No nation could bring it down. But eventually, what brought down Rome were the people of Rome and their depravity. They were so much the center that they'd become self-centered. I mean, today as Americans, we are the superpowers of the world, are we not? I mean, we are the fashion capital of the world. We are the entertainment capital of the world. Today, our rock stars sing songs, and then kids in India sing the same American rock songs because they love American rock music. Today, our movies, America's movies, Hollywood's movies, are the most watched movies everywhere in the world. In Africa, in China, here in Italy. Everywhere you look, you see movie ads for our movies. And so, you know, we're the world great power. But just as the Romans, as we've become the center of the world, we've become pretty self-centered as well. And just as they were the great inventors of so many good things, they were also the great inventors of so many heartbreaking things as well. And we've become the same. Listen to what Paul has to say about the people of Rome. He said, they became filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, depravity. They were full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice, gossip, slander. They were senseless, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Although they knew God's righteous decree that those who do not do such things deserve death, they not only continued to do these very things, but also approved those who practiced them. This was political correctness, and this was, I'm the big dog, no one's gonna tell me what to do in those days, just as we see today in our culture. You know what he's saying? He's saying these people didn't want to hold anybody accountable to their sin because they didn't want to be held accountable to their own. Is that not our world today as well? I mean, today, is that not the world we live in? People are afraid to call someone sin sometimes because they don't want to be held accountable to their own. I mean, who are we accountable to? This is why today we have to learn from the past and say, are things any different? The same stuff that Paul is saying back then is really true today about our world. Things don't really change that much, you know? When you walk this earth, you think, wow, in the history of the Roman Empire, this great world power brought itself down, piece by piece without even knowing it because of its sin. The depravity of the sin brought itself to the place of fall. And that is true today for us. The depravity of our sin and the lack of accountability is what can bring us to our own demise. It's kind of hard to imagine now, but back in its heyday, when this place was the center of the world, when this place was all built up, Paul, as a Roman citizen, had a real passion for his people, the people of Rome. He knew that everywhere you looked here, there were temples. People would gather in these temples and worship hundreds, if not thousands, of false gods, these idols, and they'd bring sacrifices to these false gods. They would bring money, and they would bring animal sacrifices. And so Paul, in his letter to the church, the Christians here at Rome, pleads with them, and he urges them. He says, "Therefore, I urge you, brothers, in the view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies to God as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to Him." He says, do not conform to the patterns of the world. Don't be like all the other Romans. Don't be like everyone else who doesn't know any better, because you're a Christian. You should know better. And he's saying, I urge you to be different from them, because that's worship. What is he saying? He's saying, everyone else thinks that worship and sacrifice is about bringing something to an idol. But we believe, as Christians, that worship and sacrifice is not about bringing something to a temple, but living out loud outside the temple, outside the church even. He's saying, let your life be a testimony for God. One day, everywhere that we live will be ruins like this. One day, your high school will be crumbled down. One day, your house will look like this. Where I live in Alabama, wherever you might live. But hopefully what will continue to remain will be our testimony as the church.